12-year-old Emily, mocked and set up as a joke for the school dance, finds an unexpected mentor in a single dad with a painful past. Through secret dance lessons and a found family bond, her heartwarming journey stuns the school and proves kindness can change everything. It began on a gray Wednesday in March, the kind that forgets how to be spring. Clouds pressed low over the hills like damp wool, and the wind smelled of thawing earth and old leaves. A bus groaned to a stop outside Briarfield Middle School, its doors opening with a sigh, as if even the machine felt tired of the cold. Emily stepped down, her shoes second-hand and slightly too big, the soles whispering against wet pavement. Her coat was faded navy, 2 sizes too large. She clutched the strap of her backpack tightly, knuckles white, as the door hissed shut behind her. She didn't look back. Inside, the school hummed with morning noise. Lockers slamming, sneakers squeaking on tile, the clatter of voices echoing in 2 bright hallways. Emily moved through it like a ghost, unnoticed at first. Then came the glances, curious, sideways. Then whispers. That's the new girl, the poor one. Her name didn't matter yet. Not to them. Just a whisper of judgment. Thin as mist and just as cold. The thing about middle school is that cruelty often arrives in small, practiced doses. A delayed invitation. A look not returned. A seat that is somehow always taken. By lunch, Emily had learned to sit at the far end of the cafeteria, by the window that rattled in the wind. She'd press her sandwich, peanut butter on dry bread, flat between her hands, listening to laughter from the center tables. She wasn't bitter. Not yet. Just tired. Like someone who'd moved too many times to bother unpacking. Grace, her mother, worked late at the diner most nights. She left notes sometimes, tucked into Emily's lunchbox. Today's note was smeared from where an apple had bruised the ink. You are enough. Always. Love you to the moon. Emily folded it twice, then again, and slid it into her coat pocket like a secret. The announcement came that afternoon, over the crackling loudspeaker. This year's spring dance will be held 3 Fridays from now. Theme, Enchanted Garden. Auditions for performers welcome. Volunteers needed. See Miss Avery if you'd like to help set up. It was spoken in the flat voice of someone who'd said too many things to care about them anymore. But for a moment, the halls shimmered with excitement. Girls clutched arms and squealed. Boys groaned and nudged each other. There were whispers of dresses and music and dates. Emily stood by her locker, fingers brushing the rusted hinge. Enchanted Garden. It sounded like something out of a book she used to love. Back before everything started breaking, a group of girls passed by, their ponytails swinging like pendulums of belonging. She probably doesn't even know how to dance. They didn't say her name. Still, Emily flinched. She didn't know how to dance. Or at least she used to. In the apartment 2 towns back, her mother would play old songs from the radio, scratchy, jazzy things that filled the kitchen with golden light. They'd twirl until they couldn't breathe from laughter. She used to know what it felt like to be light, but time had settled like dust on those memories. That evening, across town, a man named Jack was making dinner while his son, Lucas, tried to fit Legos into impossible shapes. The small house smelled of onions and garlic and damp wool, Jack's coat still drying by the radiator. He stirred the pot slowly, rhythmically, like someone used to filling silences. There was a photo on the fridge. A woman with wild, laughing eyes and a dimple that tilted left. Her arms around Jack, a streak of flour on his cheek. The kind of photo people stop taking after a person is gone. Lucas tapped the block against the floor. Dad. Jack looked over. Yeah, buddy? Do you think Mama knows how to dance in heaven? Jack's hand froze on the spoon. The room paused. Then, I think, he said softly, she's probably teaching everyone up there. Lucas nodded, satisfied. He was 7, young enough to believe in heaven, and parents who could answer anything. Emily met Lucas a week later in the school library. He was sitting on the floor, trying to tape a paper sun to a crooked cardboard planet. His tongue stuck out in concentration. Emily, who'd come looking for a book on fairy tales, paused beside him. Jupiter doesn't have rings, she said gently. Lucas looked up, startled. Does so? She shook her head. That's Saturn. Jupiter has storms. Lucas frowned, unconvinced but curious. You want to help? They spent the next 10 minutes building a solar system held together by too much tape and quiet understanding. When Jack arrived for pickup, he spotted them, Lucas chattering, Emily smiling for first time in weeks. She stood when she saw him, stepping back instinctively. Jack offered a small, careful smile, the kind you give to someone who doesn't yet know if they're safe. You must be Emily, he said. She nodded, eyes flicking toward the exit. Lucas told me about the rings, Jack added with a wink. Saturn's flattered. Jupiter is still sulking. She laughed quietly. It was the first real sound she'd made all day. The cruel joke began on a Tuesday. A boy named Tyler, popular, loud, charming in a way only 12-year-old boys can be, was dared to ask Emily to the dance. A joke, a dare passed from table to table like a secret meant to wound. He approached her at lunch with a grin too wide. Hey, he said, you want to go to the dance? With me? Emily blinked. A hush fell across the cafeteria. Her fingers curled tightly around her sandwich. Sure, she said quietly. Okay. And for a moment, she felt light again. Until the laughter came. A sharp, cruel ripple of sound from behind her. Tyler had already turned away. Emily didn't eat the rest of her lunch. She walked home that day in silence, the wind biting through her coat. At home, Grace wasn't there double shift. The apartment was quiet, save for the ticking clock and the hum of the fridge. She went to her room and shut the door. On her windowsill was a single object she kept no matter how many times they moved, a small, worn music box shaped like a ballerina's slipper. It didn't work anymore, but she still twisted the key, hoping one day it might. That night, she didn't cry. She danced, slowly, alone, in socks and silence. 2 days later, she found herself in Jack's garage. It happened quietly. Lucas had invited her to see the coolest invention ever, a shoebox full of flashlight parts and hopeful buttons, and she followed hesitant. Jack had been fixing a loose floorboard, sawdust clinging to his jeans. He looked up when he saw her, smiled gently. You okay, Emily? She nodded, then shook her head. No. Silence stretched between them. The air smelled like oil and pine. Outside, wind pushed against the garage door like a restless tide. Jack sat on a crate, wiped his hands on a rag. Want to talk? She didn't, but somehow the words came. Not all of them. Just enough. About the dance. The joke. The laughter. Jack listened. Quietly, not interrupting. When she finished, she looked down ashamed. I just wanted to prove them wrong, she whispered. But I don't know how to dance. Not really. Jack looked away, toward a dusty corner of the garage, toward a box he hadn't touched in years. My wife, he said slowly, was the one who danced, made me learn, said no one should move through life without knowing how to waltz. He stood, walked a box, and pulled out a small speaker, blew off the dust, plugged it in, static then a soft hum. Music, slow, old-fashioned, the kind you don't hear on the radio anymore. Would you let me help? He asked. Emily hesitated, then nodded. They met quietly after school, in the garage, where the concrete was cold but the music made it feel warmer. Jack was patient, never pushing. He showed her how to count the rhythm, where to place her hands. Lucas watched from the steps, munching crackers, clapping at every spin. Grace found out a week later, when Emily came home humming, cheeks flushed. You've been dancing, she said, surprised. Emily nodded. With who? Emily hesitated, then handed over a folded note, in Jack's handwriting. She's a natural. Remind me of someone who used to teach me. To Jack. Grace smiled quietly. She didn't ask more. Some kindness doesn't need to be explained. Spring came slowly that year. The snow melted in shy patches, revealing the brown grass underneath. The first daffodils pushed through in crooked clusters. The town softened at the edges. So did Emily. Her steps grew lighter. She hummed more. She didn't flinch as much in the halls. One day, she wore a ribbon in her hair, pale yellow. Someone whispered, "She doesn't look so weird anymore." She heard it, But this time, it didn't hurt. The night before the dance, Jack gave her something small, a hairpin. Silver. Simple. His wife's. She wore it when she danced, he said. Said it made her feel brave. Emily held it like a treasure. Thank you, she whispered. Jack only nodded, but his eyes shone a little. That night, Emily practiced alone in her room. Slow turns, careful steps, the music from the garage still playing in her mind. On the windowsill, the music box sat silent, but somehow the room felt full of music anyway. The garage smelled like cedar and dust, with a hint of oil that clung to the edges of memory. Light filtered through the single window above the workbench, thin, gold, and quiet, like an old photograph left too long in the sun. Outside, the world was beginning to believe in spring, but here, inside the space of old tools and careful silence, something softer was beginning to bloom. Emily stood near the center of the garage, her arms folded tight around her ribs. Jack reached into the corner, pulling out a folded rug that had once been used for camping trips long past. He unrolled it carefully across the cold concrete, a makeshift dance floor in the heart of the ordinary. The corners curled a little. I know it's not a ballroom, he said with a half smile. Emily nodded. It's better. The music crackled to life from a small Bluetooth speaker set on an upturned milk crate. It wasn't loud, just enough to fill the space like breath. An old melody, something with strings and longing, the kind of music people don't write anymore. Jack offered his hand. She hesitated, then took it. The first time they danced, it was clumsy. She stepped on his foot. He apologized for stepping on hers. They moved in half circles and crooked lines. But there was no judgment in the way he held his frame, just patience. Steady, gentle, unhurried. You count it like this, he said softly. 1, 2, 3, 4. Feel the sway in your knees. Don't think. Just follow the music. Emily tried. Her arms were stiff at first, her shoulders tense. But the music wove through her like an old lullaby, something half-remembered and warm. Outside, the wind picked up soft, steady, brushing against the garage door like an old friend knock and come in. The second night, she showed up before Lucas had even finished his snack. She was waiting on the porch when Jack opened the door. Her coat still hung awkwardly off her shoulders, and her backpack straps were frayed. But her eyes held a quiet determination that made Jack pause. You ready? He asked. She nodded. Lucas grinned. I'm going to be the audience. The dance began again. This time, Jack dimmed the overhead light, letting the single bulb over the workbench cast a soft amber glow. Shadows moved like slow partners along the walls. Emily's feet began to trust the rug. Her hands found rhythm in Jack's lead. Her body, so often hunched in quiet defense, began to stretch, to open. Between steps, Jack would tell her stories of how his wife had danced with wild abandon in the same garage, pulling him into spins while soup boiled over on the stove inside, of how she used to say, every room deserves to be a dance floor once. Emily listened. She didn't speak much, but she held those stories like folded paper cranes, delicate and tucked into the corners of her heart. Grace noticed a change. Her daughter, who used to drift through the apartment like a shadow, now came home humming under her breath. She wore small smiles like secrets. At dinner, she helped without being asked, humming the same soft tune over and over. One night, Grace asked, Where do you go after school? Emily paused, then answered, To dance. And Grace, tired, worn from years of carrying too much, didn't ask more, just smiled. There was something in her eyes, though something close to relief. The third week, Emily brought her own music. A flash drive with songs she remembered from long ago, from kitchen radios and sunlit days. Jack didn't ask where they came from. He simply plugged them in. The first song that played was scratchy and full of brass, something old and joyful. She looked at him. My mom used to dance to this. He offered his hand. Then let's honor her. They danced, and for the first time, Emily spun without hesitation. It wasn't just about the dance. Jack knew that. Each session, they'd start with a warm-up, a slow walk across the rug. He'd ask about her day, Not directly, not prying, just soft questions. She answered in fragments. Tyler wasn't teasing anymore. Some kids were watching her differently now. Like, maybe they'd been wrong. Emily didn't say she was afraid of the dance night. She didn't need to. Jack saw it in the way her fingers twisted in the hem of her sleeve when she thought no one was looking. So he showed her a trick. He pulled out an old coin, worn, copper, the kind people don't carry anymore. Whenever I felt nervous, I'd keep this in my pocket, he said. Gives you something to hold, something to remember you're not alone. He placed it in her palm. You don't have to keep it. Just borrow it. She closed her fingers around it slowly. I'll take good care of it. I know. Lucas joined in once. He wore socks that didn't match and insisted on leading. Dancing is just walking with style, he declared. Emily laughed so hard she lost her step. For a moment, the garage was filled with more than music. It was laughter and light, memory and future all tangled together. Jack watched them, the girl who had become like a second daughter, and the boy who reminded him that life still had room for joy. Something inside him ached, but not the sharp ache of loss, the ache of healing. The day before the dance, Jack opened a drawer and pulled out a small velvet pouch. Inside was a hairpin. Silver. Simple. A leaf design along the curve. His wife had worn it the night she danced barefoot in the rain. Pulling Jack with her until they were soaked and laughing, the neighbors watching from behind curtains. He hadn't opened the pouch in years. He handed it to Emily wordlessly. She unwrapped it carefully, as if it might disappear. I can't take this, she whispered. You're not taking it, he said. You're wearing it, just for the night. She looked at him, eyes wide, glassy, then nodded. He didn't need to say it, he trusted her. She knew. That evening, Grace helped her try it on. She brushed Emily's hair gently, carefully, like she used it when Emily was very small. There was tenderness in the motion. Redemption, too. Emily looked into the mirror and didn't see the new girl, the poor girl, the one picked as a joke. She saw someone with a spine of steel and a heart made of soft fire. Someone who knew how to dance. When Jack picked her up the next evening, he didn't say much, just offered a proud smile. She wore a simple blue dress. No glitter, no lace, but it swayed when she walked and shimmered in the light. The hairpin caught in her curls like a secret. Lucas clapped. You look like magic. And she did. They stood in the school parking lot for a moment before going in. Music thudded from inside, louder, faster. Kids shouting, laughing. Somewhere a whistle blew. Jack bent down and said softly, You remember the steps? She nodded, but her breath was shallow. He pressed something into her hand. The coin. She clutched it hard, then opened the door. Inside the gym, the world tilted slightly. Lights hung from the ceiling in the shapes of stars. Paper flowers wound around the bleachers. The air was thick with perfume and sweat and too much hope. Kids turned when she walked in. Some stared. Some didn't recognize her. Tyler, the boy who made the joke, stood near the snack table, frozen. She looked straight at him, then walked past chin high. Each step, she heard the music in her head. The rhythm Jack had taught her. 1, 2, 3, 4. She didn't wait to be asked. She walked to the center. And when the slow song played, just once, she began to dance. Alone and utterly unafraid. She spun, slowly, not for them, for herself, for her mother, who once danced in the kitchen, for Jack's wife, who believed every room deserved its moment, for Jack, who gave her second chances in a garage filled with dust and grace. And when she turned toward the crowd, she saw Lucas grinning from the edge of the gym, and Jack, hand on his heart. Outside, the moon was full. The night smelled of thawing earth and lilacs not yet in bloom. Emily stepped into the cool air, breath visible, heart pounding. She reached into her pocket and held the coin, then looked up at Jack. It worked, she said. He smiled. I knew it would. She took out the hairpin, held it out to him. He shook his head. It's yours now. Emily's hands trembled. Are you sure? He looked at her, not as a teacher or a father figure or anything so simple, but as someone who'd found family in the most unexpected places. I'm sure. The car ride home was quiet. Soft music on the radio. Lucas asleep in the back seat. Emily watched the stars blur past a window. Somewhere inside, she felt something shift. She was no longer the new girl. She was someone who had danced and been seen. He placed it in her palm. You don't have to keep it. Just borrow it. She closed her fingers around it slowly. I'll take good care of it. I know. Lucas joined in once. He wore socks that didn't match and insisted on leading. Dancing is just walking with style, he declared. Emily laughed so hard she lost her step. For a moment, the garage was filled with more than music. It was laughter and light, memory and future all tangled together. Jack watched them, the girl who became like a second daughter, and the boy who reminded him that life still had room for joy. Something inside him ached, but not the sharp ache of loss, the ache of healing. The day before the dance, Jack opened a drawer and pulled out a small velvet pouch. Inside was a hairpin, silver, simple, a leaf design along the curve. His wife had worn it the night she danced barefoot in the rain. Pulling Jack with her until they were soaked and laughing, the neighbors watching from behind curtains. He hadn't opened the pouch in years. He handed it to Emily wordlessly. She unwrapped it carefully, as if it might disappear. I can't take this, she whispered. You're not taking it, he said. You're wearing it, just for the night. She looked at him, eyes wide, glassy, then nodded. He didn't need to say it, he trusted her. She knew. That evening, Grace helped her try it on. She brushed Emily's hair gently, carefully, like she used it when Emily was very small. There was tenderness in the motion, redemption, too. Emily looked into the mirror and didn't see the new girl, the poor girl, the one picked as a joke. She saw someone with a spine of steel and a heart made of soft fire, someone who knew how to dance. When Jack picked her up the next evening, he didn't say much, just offered a proud smile. She wore a simple blue dress, no glitter, no lace, but it swayed when she walked and shimmered in the light. The hairpin caught in her curls like a secret. Lucas clapped. You look like magic. And she did. They stood in the school parking lot for a moment before going in. Music thudded from inside, louder, faster. Kids shouting, laughing. Somewhere a whistle blew. Jack bent down and said softly, You remember the steps? She nodded, but her breath was shallow. He pressed something into her hand. The coin. She clutched it hard, then opened the door. Inside the gym, the world tilted slightly. Lights hung from the ceiling in the shapes of stars. Paper flowers wound around the bleachers. The air was thick with perfume and sweat and too much hope. Kids turned when she walked in. Some stared. Some didn't recognize her. Tyler, the boy who made the joke, stood near the snack table, frozen. She looked straight at him, then walked past chin high. Each step, she heard the music in her head. The rhythm Jack had taught her. 1, 2, 3, 4. She didn't wait to be asked. She walked to the center. And when the slow song played, just once, she began to dance. Alone and utterly unafraid. She spun, slowly, not for them, for herself, for her mother, who once danced in the kitchen, for Jack's wife, who believed every room deserved its moment, for Jack, who gave her second chances in a garage filled with dust and grace. And when she turned toward the crowd, she saw Lucas grinning from the edge of the gym, and Jack, hand on his heart. Outside, the moon was full. The night smelled of thawing earth and lilacs not yet in bloom. Emily stepped into the cool air, breath visible, heart pounding. She reached into her pocket and held the coin, then looked up at Jack. It worked, she said. He smiled. I knew it would. She took out the hairpin, held it out to him. He shook his head. It's yours now. Emily's hands trembled. Are you sure? He looked at her, not as a teacher or a father figure or anything so simple, but as someone who'd found family in the most unexpected places. I'm sure. The car ride home was quiet. Soft music on the radio. Lucas asleep in the back seat. Emily watched the stars blur past a window. Somewhere inside, she felt something shift. She was no longer the new girl. She was someone who had danced and been seen. The stars came early that evening, as if the sky knew this night mattered more than others. A hush settled over the neighborhood. Porch lights blinked on like quiet guardians. Somewhere far off, a dog barked, but even that sound felt softened, muffled by the velvet dark and the promise stitched into the air. Emily sat on the edge of her bed, dress laid out beside her like a small miracle. It was blue, deep and still at a lake before dawn. Simple, no sequins or tulle, but it shimmered when she moved, catching light in its folds the way water catches memory. Grace stood behind her, gently combing through her daughter's hair. There was no chatter, just the sound of brush through curls, the creak of the floorboard beneath their feet, and the soft rise and fall of breath. Two heartbeats slowly finding each other again. The hairpin waited on the windowsill. Silver, shaped like a leaf. The kind of beautiful that doesn't need to announce itself. Grace picked it up without a word and carefully slid it into Emily's hair. Her hands trembled slightly, not from age, but from something else, something old and aching and tender. Emily looked at her in the mirror. "You okay, Mom?" Grace blinked, then nodded. "You just look like someone I used to know." Emily tilted her head. "Me?" Grace smiled. "Me." And in that moment, the air between them stitched a little closer. Not fully whole, but mending. Outside, the air had turned cold. Jack waited by the truck, engine humming low, headlights washing over the curb like quiet lanterns. Lucas sat in the back seat with a juice box and a blanket, kicking his feet against the seat and humming a tune only he could hear. When Emily stepped out, Jack looked up, and for a moment he couldn't breathe. She didn't look like a princess. She looked real, brave, made of second chances and firelight. "Whoa," Lucas whispered. "You're like a story." Jack cleared his throat. "You ready?" Emily nodded. And when Jack opened the truck door, she didn't just climb in. She stepped forward. The school gym was already full. Laughter spilled out into the parking lot, loud and tangled with music that buzzed against the glass doors. Inside, lights spun on the ceiling like tiny galaxies. Paper lanterns hung in clusters, glowing soft and gold. The floor shimmered with glitter and shoe scuffs. Teachers hovered at the edges like sentinels, trying to keep order in a world made of hormones and hope. Emily stood at the doorway and hesitated. Her fingers found the coin in her pocket. Warm, solid, steady. Jack leaned down, his voice low. "You don't have to dance yet. Just breathe. You're here. That's enough for now." She nodded and stepped inside. At first, it was noise, movement, a blur of arms and colors and perfume, and laughter that felt too big. She walked along the edge of the gym, eyes scanning the crowd. Some kids looked her way. Some didn't. One girl, Leah, from art class, gave her a small smile. Emily smiled back. Not big, just enough. The music shifted. A slower song. The crowd thinned in the center. Couples formed. Some serious, some awkward, a few just pretending for the sake of the rhythm. Emily stood alone. And then Tyler stepped forward, the boy who started it. The joke, he didn't smile, didn't laugh, just offered a hand. "Want to dance?" The air went still. Emily looked at him. She thought of the garage, the rug, Jack's steady voice, Lucas clapping, the music in her chest. She thought of her mother's hands brushing through her hair, of the silver leaf tucked near her ear. She thought of that coin, and shook her head. "No thanks." Her voice was steady, kind, final. Then she walked past him, to the center, alone. The crowd shifted. Whispers. Someone snickered. But then the music changed. A song she had chosen. Old, slow, full of strings and memory. Her fingers flexed, her feet moved, and she began to dance. Just like in the garage. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sway. Step. Breathe. Her eyes closed. And the gym faded away. It was just a rhythm now. And her. Something happened then. Slowly, almost like no one meant to, the room quieted. The laughter dulled. Kids stopped moving. Teachers paused. Because what they were seeing wasn't a girl being laughed at. It was a girl being herself, with grace, with fire, with freedom. Somewhere near the door, Jack watched. His hands were in his pockets, but his heart was on the floor with her, every step, every sway. And when she turned, when her eyes caught his for just a second, she smiled. Not big, but real. Lucas clapped. She's doing it. Jack nodded, his eyes shining. She is... Emily didn't see the stairs anymore. She didn't need to. This wasn't for them. This was for the garage and the music, for the woman who used to dance in the kitchen, for the man who gave her space to fall and rise again, for herself. When the song ended, she stepped back. The room didn't erupt into applause. That wasn't the point. But something shifted. Somewhere deep, the next song came on. And this time, someone asked her to dance. Not as a joke. Not for show. Just because. And Emily said yes. The night wore on. She laughed. She danced. She sipped punch that was too sweet. At one point, she leaned against the wall, breathless and grinning. Leah joined her. That was amazing, Leah said. Emily shrugged. Just dancing. No, Leah said. That was brave. Emily looked down, smiled. Thanks. Later, near the end of the night, Jack stepped in, not to interfere, just to watch. But one of the teachers, Mrs. Henley, smiled at him. She's lucky to have you. Jack shook his head. No, I'm lucky to know her. And he meant it. Outside, the sky had opened into stars. The gym doors let out waves of warmth and sound as kids spilled into the night. Emily stood by the truck now, coat wrapped around her, the coin in her hand, the hairpin still catching light. Jack opened the door for her. As she climbed in, she turned to him. Thank you. He didn't ask what for. He just nodded. Back at home, Grace was waiting by the window. Emily ran into her arms. And for the first time in a long time, Grace held her without fear of breaking anything between them. You danced? She asked softly. Emily nodded against her shoulder. I did. That night in her room, Emily opened a notebook. Inside were drawings, scribbles, dreams. She took the coin and taped it to the back page, then wrote beneath it, the night I danced, the night I wasn't afraid. In the quiet of the living room, Jack sat beside the fireplace. Lucas asleep upstairs. The house still. He held an old letter in his hands, one his wife had written long ago, tucked into a recipe book. If you ever feel like giving up, find someone to believe in. It will save you both. Jack smiled and looked toward the garage. It was quiet now, but full of echoes.